بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Inshallah, Jum'ah Mubarak, and I hope, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would help us to continue after months of Ramadan with more energy, inshallah. As you remember, we were talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will belonging to our actions. And the late Khaja Nasiruddin al-Tusi rahmatullah alayh said, وَالضَّرُورَةُ قَاضِيَةٌ بِاسْتِنَادِ أَفْعَالِنَا إِلَيْنَا. So he said, it is dharuri, it means badihi, means self-evident, that our actions are attributed to us. In a real and true sense, we can say these are our actions. And then we said that the Ash'arites had the idea that our actions are not really our actions. They are Allah's actions, but they have difficulty in explaining how they are our actions. Either this is metaphoric or, we are the subject, the place, So they have introduced the idea of Kashf. We talked about this. Now, Khaja Rahmatullah Alayhi wants to answer to some of the objections of the Ash'arites. So we want to see whether they can really pose some difficulties to our idea or not. The first thing is here. وَالْوُجُوبُ لِلدَّاعِي لَا يُنَافِي الْقُدْرَةَ كَالْوَاجِبِ. وَالْوُجُوبُ لِلدَّاعِي لَا يُنَافِي الْقُدْرَةَ كَالْوَاجِبِ. Of course, there are different versions of this sentence, and in the footnote that Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh Amuli has put here, he prefers the way that I read, al-wujubu lid-da'i, because in some version says al-wujubu da'i, in some version says al-wujub wad-da'i, but he prefers this one, wal-wujub lid-da'i, the same as what is on the screen. La yunafi al-qudrata kal-wajib. To have wujub, necessity, because of a kind of da'i, a kind of motive. Da'i means what calls the agent to action. The reason that the agent wants to do something. So if the action becomes necessary because the agent has a kind of da'i, a kind of motive that calls him to action, this would not contradict with the power of the agent. You cannot say this agent is majbur, is forced to do, he has no power because has da'i. No. Even wajibul wujud bizat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has da'i, and after da'i his action becomes necessary, and this would not conflict with his power. What is important is that when we look at the essence of the agent, there is no necessity. Means it's mumkin, it's jaiz. But the same fa'il, the same agent, after having some angize, we say in Farsi angize, in Arabic we say da'i or motive, then it becomes necessary to do it. So let us see how Allama Halli rahmatullah alayh explains this. أقول لما فرغ من تغيير المذهب شرع في الجواب عن شبه الخصم. In my version is shubah, in your version is shubha. Shubha is singular and shubha is plural. And as we said before many times, shubha is a kind of objection, a kind of question raised which is problematic, which can confuse. When they say shubha, they already mean that this is not proper. They already mean that this is just confusing. Okay, so now شرع في الجواب عن شبه الخصم. Khaja started giving answer to the objections of khasm. Khasm means enemy, but in discussion means the other side of the debate, means the opponents. There shouldn't be any, khusuma or enmity, although it sometimes led to enmity actually, physical fighting, some issues, in old religions sometimes have led to fighting, but here means khas means the other side of the debate. So, the first shubha, وتقرير الشبهة الأولى أن صدور الفعل من المكلف إما أن يقارن تجويز لا صدوره أو امتناع لا صدوره. When an action happens from mukallaf, because the whole idea was whether we as mukallaf are involved in these actions or not. So he wants to say that if we as mukallaf happen to do something, are we able not to do it, or we are not able not to? If we say we are not able not to do it, means we have no power, because we said power belongs to both sides. If you say we are able to do it, then he says, how then it has happened if it was just possible? As we said, the question of da'i is very important. Without da'i, we can be undecided. But with da'i, we decide to do one side. So, let us see what is the shubha of the Ash'arites, and then, inshallah, after a few lines, we give the answer that Khaja has given. The shubha is this. أن صدور الفعل من المكلف إما أن يقارن تجويز لا صدوره أو امتناع لا صدوره. The issuance, the happening of the action from mukallaf has one of the two options. Either it happened and we say it was possible. Tajweez means to believe something is possible, to permit the poor side. Here means to recognize possibility. That it was possible to say it could happen and could not happen. Tajweez Allah sudurahi means although it happened, but it was possible not to happen. So, for example, I have written something. You can say writing this was at the same time coming with the option of not writing. I could write, I could not write. Means decide not to write. Or you say no. Imtina Allah suduri. There was no option. I wrote and it was necessary to write. Means it was impossible not to write. So there are two options. Either you say, I wrote And I could also decide to do opposite. Or you say, I wrote and I had no other choice. So this is two kind of options that Ash'arites give us. If you say it was not possible not to write, Athani means to say it was not possible not to write. Yastalzamul jabr. Because you say, definitely you had to do this. So it means that there was predetermination. Wal awwal. If you say no, you had choice. You wrote it, but you could decide not to write it. Okay. إما أن يترجح منه الصدور على لا صدوره لمرجح أو لا لمرجح. If I had two options, to write and not to write, and still I wrote, there are two further options here. The sub options for the first option. I wrote, I could also decide not to write, and there was no murajjih, nothing to prefer writing over not writing. Or you say there was no murajjih, nothing to give tarjih, nothing to give preference. إما أن يترجح منه الصدور على لا صدوره. The fact that he chose or I chose to write. This writing is one side. This was because there was a preference, something that gave preference to writing over not writing, or there was no preference. La murajjih. They were totally equal, and still I chose one side. If you say there was no murajjih at all, nothing to prioritize or prefer one side to the other side, الثاني يلزم منه الترجيح لأحد طرفي الممكن من غير مرجح. This would lead to tarjih بلا مرجح. Means two equal sides. One is given preference without having any preference. I could write and also could decide not to write, but I wrote, but had no preference, nothing to make the side or the party of doing better or stronger. وهو محال. ترجيح بلا مرجح is محال. والأول. If you say no, there wasn't مرجح. So I decided to write because writing had preference, something preferred it over not writing. Now we solved one problem. Okay, now there is no tarjih wala murajjah, but we have another problem. What is the other problem? The other problem is that thing that gives preference, where did it come from? And finally, was it something that I had any role in it or was imposed from outside? So he says, al-awwalu. If we say there was murajjih, يستلزم التسلسل أو الانتهاء إلى ما يجب معه الترجيح. Either you have to keep shifting, say, there was a preference, and that preference was because another preference, that preference from another preference. Basically, you run away from giving a clear answer, and tasalsul is not acceptable. Or you have to say there was something that was there that led to this series of preferences, one or two or more preferences, but finally there was something that it's because of that thing that I decided writing over not writing. Okay, that thing you have no role. And this becomes jabr. So, أبل انتهاء إلى ما يجب معه الترجيح وهو ينافي التقدير. This tarjih contradicts with taqdir. Means that it is something which is imposed and you have no role and no free will finally. ويستلزم الجبر. It would imply predeterminism, or sorry, predestination or determinism. Actually, this is one of the greatest challenges that can be caused for Jabr, and inshallah I will explain later how to deal with it. So let me repeat again, I hope it was clear, but just not to take risk. The idea of the Ash'arites here is to say that you cannot be responsible for your actions. It should come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you are responsible for your action, if you have decided, for example, to write, and it was your action, we have few questions. Did you have chance not to write, or you had to write? If you say, no, I had to write, then this is Jabr. If you say, I had chance not to write, but I decided to write, they say, okay, was it possible not to write and you still wrote because of preference, or there was no preference? If you say there was no preference, they say this is tarjih bil al-Murad. If you say there was preference, they say, where did this preference come from? Something belonged to writing. Did you have any role in that? And if you say this was because of something else, then because of something else, and you want to run away, they don't let you run away because tasalsul is batil. If you say it was something that I had decided which led to this, okay, they shift the question to that thing that you decided, and they say, was it possible not to decide? So finally it leads to the point that you have to accept there was something which you didn't make any decision about it, and then becomes Jabr. So they want to use this shubha, it's a strong shubha, to say that when you wrote, you had no chance or choice of not writing. So you have to say it's done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, otherwise it becomes Jabr. Of course, they don't mind, Jabr. They are using this as an argument against us, otherwise they don't have any issue with Jabr. Wal jawab. Now please listen carefully to the reply given by Khaja, and on behalf of Khaja, Allama Halli rahmatullah alayhi explains. أن الفعل بالنظر إلى قدرة العبد ممكن. The action considering the power of the mukallaf or servant is mumkin. Is contingent, has two sides. But if you want to add da'i to it, it becomes necessary. وواجب بالنظر إلى da'i. But considering the da'i for fail, it becomes necessary. وذلك لا يستلزم الجبر. This would not lead to Jabr, because Jabr is that even the first with بالنظر إلى قدرة العبد has to be ضروري. But if fa'il has a reason for doing something and then does it, it's not Jabr. Otherwise, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to say is majbur. Who is doing Jabr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who is forcing him? But he has da'i, and with da'i he's doing this. فإن كل قادر فإنه يجب عنه الأثر عند وجود الداعي. Everyone who has power, that action, that effect must come from him, must happen, or must be issued from him when there is da'i, there is motive. كما في حق الواجب تعالى. Even for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the same. فإن هذا الدليل قائم في حقه تعالى. The same thing you can say about him. If he has da'i to do, can still he decide not to do? if you say, no, he cannot, then you say, oh, he's majboor. And if you say, yes, he has option, then they will say, okay, where does that come from? Where is the preference, coming from? So the way to be saved from this problem, the way for, khalas from this problem is what we said, that al-wujubu lid-da'i. Al-wujubu lid-da'i. And this al-wujubu lid-da'i la yunafi al-qudrata kal-wajib. So because of that motive, it becomes necessary. Without that motive, it's not necessary. So am I able to write or not to write? Yes. No one is forcing me now to write. No one is forcing me not to write. It's to me. Then I find a reason to do it or not to do it. Then I decide to write or not to write. But the initial choice that I had is enough to say that I am free person. Then Allama Hilli Rahmatullah Alayh mentions another point, an extra answer to the shubha of the Ash'arites. And he says, you actually are the people who have no issue with tarjih bila murajjih. Why, when it comes to here, you have issue? Yes, many philosophers have problem with tarjih bila murajjih. It's the common idea among philosophers and mutakallimin is tarjih bila murajjih is problematic. Although there are some people who say there is no problem, but majority say there's a problem. But you people yourself don't have any issue. ألا أن هذا غير مسموع من أكثرهم. Moreover, this objection cannot be accepted from most of them. Why? حيث جوزوا من القادر ترجيح أحد مقدوريه على الآخر من غير مرجح. Because most of them have said someone who has power can choose one side over the other without any murajjah, without anything that gives preference. I can go to the right, I can go to the left, without any preference, I can decide. So if you believe in this, why here you are asking for murajjah? وبه أجابوا عن الشبهة التي أوردها الفلاسفة عليهم. And actually with this, they have tried to answer the objection of the philosophers on them. When philosophers, wanted to say that your idea leads to Jabr, they try to say, no, tarjih bila murajjah is not necessary. فما أدري لما كان الجواب مسموعا هناك ولم يكن مسموعا ها هنا. Why their answer over there worked for them, but if someone here says tarjih bila murajjah is not a problem, does not work. So why you can benefit from this, and they don't let the other side of the debate here, the opponent, benefit from this. Of course, I don't want to judge, but maybe Allah knows better, because maybe he has really looked into their text. But maybe I'm saying just as a possibility that maybe they wanted to say that it's for you a problem. In the same way that they mentioned the issue of Jabr, because the other side could not accept it, not themselves. So maybe here also they want to mention tarjih bila murajjah and say that you cannot accept tarjih bila murajjah. It's the kind of what we call jadal. In jadal, you sometimes argue not from what you accept. Sometimes you argue from what the other side accepts. So you say, based on what you believe, you have to come to this conclusion that you cannot accept. Maybe I have no problem with it, but you cannot accept this. This is possible. This is not a weak argument. So we have to see whether Ash'arites who have raised this question have actually wanted to use it as a jadal, or they spoke as if they themselves believe that it's impossible to have tarjih bila murajjah. So this was the first objection. Before I go to the next one, I would like to mention that this issue of Jabr, as you know, is one of the biggest issues in philosophy. In religion, in theology, which is mostly based on the scriptures, it's not that difficult. For example, we can easily, based from the Quran and Hadith, say that Jabr is not acceptable. There are many, many things in the Quran that would not make sense if we believe in Jabr. But when it comes to pure philosophy, then it's not that easy. And one of the major problems is this issue of where do our preferences come from and where we get our motivations. I don't want to go into this discussion because it takes time, but I just want to give a little clue for those who are interested in this subject, that in my humble understanding, the clue is here, that we have to have motives, we have to have desires for different parties or different parts so that we can make decision, and we have these motives and we can choose among them. So if I had motive only for one thing and not for the other side, it seems very difficult to say that still I could prefer it. Or if I had no motive at all, to say to prefer it. Although some people deny tarjih bila murajjah, so we can look into the issue of tarjih bila murajjah. But I think tarjih bila murajjah is very difficult to accept. So there needs to be a preference. If there is tarjih only for one side, or we have no tarjih, it's very difficult to explain how we would still be responsible morally for our actions. Because that tarjih finally would lead to something that I have not done. Because my very first responsible choice that I made, you cannot say it was because of your decision before. So my very first responsible choice that I made must be because of a murajjah, and that murajjah was not responsibly done or created by me. Maybe right now you can say you make lots of choices based on what you have built in yourself, with your action, with your thoughts, with your way you have developed yourself. All that now bear on your decisions. This is right. But you have to keep me every moment free. And to make this problem clear, we take you to the very first responsible choice you made. How you can explain freedom there. If either you have to say we don't need to accept tarjih bila murajjah, or if you say we have to accept tarjih bila murajjah, you have to show me how I can ignore that murajjah, or how I have a role in that murajjah. My humble answer is this, that we within ourselves have different types of desires put by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is to us to maneuver among them. I cannot create desire in myself to begin with. For the very first responsible choice that I made, I could not have created those desires in me. They must have come from outside me or from the way I am created. Even if it is from the way I am created, still it's not good enough to make me responsible, because you could say, okay, you could have been created another way. In order to be morally responsible, definitely my free choice has to come. So my free choice must be despite the things that are created in me or given to me or part of my upbringing, etc. And I think our free will is to work among or with the desires that I already have. Maybe I could not have before that, created or increased, but still I can choose among them. I can try to be lazy and do mischief, for example, or I can try to take a little trouble, but be moral, be helpful. I can be selfish or be selfless, and I have desires for all of them in me. I have discussed this a little bit in the last chapter of my book, Ethical Relativism. So I think this issue, anyway, it's a very important issue, and I didn't want to leave it without giving a little clue. But inshallah, maybe if there's interest, we can discuss it more in future. Now we go to the next shubha. الإيجاد لا يستلزم العلم إلا مع اقتران القصد فيكفي الإجمال. The second shubha of the Ash'arites is this. They want to say why we cannot be responsible for our actions. They say sometimes we do things, and if we were really the doer, we should have had the knowledge about them. But many times you do things without you knowing. For example, when you walk, when you write, do you know all the details of your motion or your writing? How many millimeters, for example, you move the pen to the right, to the left, how much you, press it. There are many details that you don't know about your action. If it was your action, you must know about it. So, Khaja gives the answer, then we will inshallah see how Allama mentions the problem and the answer. Khaja says, Al-Ijad la yastalzimul ilm. First of all, to create doesn't need always knowledge. Those of you who studied, Bidayatul Hikmah and, Introduction to Philosophy, you remember we said there are maybe 8, 9 types of fa'il, and some of them don't have knowledge. For example, fa'il tabi'i. If fire burns, fire doesn't have knowledge. Yes, some types of fa'il need knowledge, like fa'il bil qasd. If you do something with decision, by your intention, you do something. But even when there is need for knowledge, that knowledge can be ijmali. You can have a holistic knowledge. You don't need to know every little piece of that thing. So, 2 things that Khaja says. 1, al-ijad la yastalzimul ilm. It's not that ijad necessarily requires knowledge. We can have some mujad who don't have knowledge about their action. Illa ma iqtiran al-qasd. Unless ijad is with qasd. So we have fa'il bil qasd, like us, when we decide to do things and we do it. So here is correct. We need knowledge. But what type of knowledge? فَيَكْفِي الْإِجْمَالِ. Al-Ijmali is enough. Holistic knowledge. So, some types of fa'il don't need knowledge. Fa'il bil qasd, yes, needs knowledge, but ijmali is enough. أقول هذا الجواب عن شبهة أخرى لهم. This response is response to another objection. وتقريرها أن العبد لو كان موجدا لأفعال نفسه لكان عالما بها. If the servant mukallaf was creating his own actions, had to know about them, had to be aware of them. وَالتَّالِي باطل فَالْمُقَدَّمُ مِثْلُ. So, if we were creating our actions, we had to know about them. But we don't know about them, so we are not the creator. وَالشَّرْطِيَّةُ ظَاهِرَةٌ. Why this conditional sentence is true? Why, if we were creators of our actions, we had to know about them? They say it's obvious. Because how can you create something that you don't know? Of course, we say it's not that obvious. You are assuming that every creator or every fa'il is bilqasd? No. But for some fa'il, yes, it's correct, but not all. So, if we were fa'il, we had to know. We don't know, so we are not fa'il. You have to explain two things so that this argument works. One is why there is such a relation between two, why this shartiyya, this conditional sentence true, why if we were fa'il we had to know. They say it's zahira. They don't want to argue for it. Why we don't know? Say, look at yourself. You do anything that you don't know. So P, then Q. If not Q, then not P. So this is the way they want to argue. الشرطية ظاهرة. The conditional sentence is obvious, so they don't want to argue for it. They want to take it for granted. وبيان بطلان التالي, that we don't have knowledge. If we were fa'il, we had to know, but we don't know, not Q. So we don't have fa'il. We are not fa'il. بيان بطلان التالي, why we don't have knowledge. أن حال الحركة, when we are moving. نفعل حركات جزئية, we do many small pieces of motion. لا نعقلها, we don't understand them. It means we don't perceive them, we don't know about them. وإنما نقصد الحركة إلى المنتهى. For example, I say, let me go to this shop, let me go to this park. I am not aware how many steps I have taken, how many centimeters, I have walked. وإن لم نقصد جزئيات تلك الحركة, we only make decision to go to that destination, and we don't make decision about all the details of that movement. Al-Jawab. Now the reply is this. أن الإيجاد لا يستلزم العلم. First of all, that general statement that you say fa'il must be aware of the fail, we say أن الإيجاد لا يستلزم العلم. To create does not require knowledge. فإن الفاعل قد يصدر عنه الفعل بمجرد الطبع. Sometimes we have some types of fa'il that just by their nature they do something. كالإحراق الصادر عن النار من غير علم. Like fire burns, but fire doesn't have knowledge and awareness of what it's doing. فلا يلزم من نفي العلم نفي الإيجاد. So from negating knowledge, you cannot say there is no ijad, there is no fa'il. نعم, yes. الإيجاد مع القصد يستلزم العلم. To create with purpose, with intention, that requires knowledge, but doesn't need to be detailed. I want to go to the shop. Okay, I have some idea, some direction. I know, where to go, and I have, some knowledge that how much it's going to take. Maybe I don't know exactly, but for example, if I thought that it's going to be 1,000 kilometers, I am not going to shop over there. I have some knowledge, I have some familiarity. Based on that, I make decision, although I don't know all the details. Or maybe it doesn't matter to me actually, all the details. If I needed all the details, I would have, calculated them first. like نعم الإيجاد مع القصد يستلزم العلم لكن العلم الإجمالي كاف في إيجاد with intention requires knowledge, but holistic knowledge, something general is adequate. وهو حاصل في الحركات الجزئية بين المبدأ والمنتهى. And we have this much of knowledge about a small motions that we are going to make. So we know this much, but we don't know the details, and details are not needed to be known. Okay. Now we have other objections. Maybe we can leave it for inshallah next session, so that if you have some questions, inshallah we can discuss questions. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.